Okay, Nick, we're back. We just looked at how to do quick parent-student ad. Really important feature. If you haven't seen that video, I suggest that you watch that before we take a look at this one. All right, so in this one, we've already assumed that we've already created the relationship between a student and a parent. Now, looking over here at recently accessed, this is a nice function because what this allows us to do is to look up a parent or a student that we've just been dealing with recently, and we can quickly go to their account. Something else to know though is that you can search in a student or a parent or an instructor or an admin account from the account search window, and this is populated throughout the system. So if you're at the calendar page as an example, and we're dealing with calendaring, and then somebody calls in and you need to get to their account, don't think you need to go to people and then the substab student and then look up the student. Just scroll to the bottom of the page and you can see there it is, account search is at the bottom, and so we can look up that student and go right to their account. Okay, just by clicking on it. So really easy to get to the accounts that we want to deal with from any page. Now I think that the one that we dealt with, I'm going to go back to the home page here because I want to take a look at one other thing about the searching. So I think what I'd done, what did we call? I think we called it, there it is right there, we called it sample parent and sample student, right? But I had given them different last names. So I just wanted to show what happens when I pull up parent. Let's go and put in the full. So I put in sample parent. Sample parent is the parent, and it'll bring up the relationship of the student as well. And what's nice about this is that if a parent has one last name, a student has a different last name, and you don't know the student's last name, you can search for the parent's name, and it will bring up the student-related relationship right there. So we're going to look at a couple things. Well, let me ask you any questions about that, about being able to search lots of functions and being able to look up for the student and the parent, even if you don't know what their last name is. If you know one, don't know the other.
Oh, it's very convenient. So when the student's profile is created, it's automatically associated with the parent so that you don't need to know both of their names at the same time.
Yeah, it comes in really handy like when a parent calls in and says, hey, this is Joe Smith. I want to get my kid scheduled for, and you forget who their kid is. This is, you can look up Joe Smith and immediately know who the child is that you're dealing with. Really important way for making sure that they feel like you got a good relationship with them. All right, so what we're going to look at now is how do we grab the rest of the information for the parent? We're assuming that we've done some marketing, the parent's ready to actually begin some work, so we need to gather the rest of their information. So I'm going to go to the parent account first by clicking on it. And then I'm just going to click on this edit. Now I can get from this under the people tab as well, and you can look up the parent and click edit, and you can edit their account from there. But this is a really way to get to that field. Excuse me. Okay, so now we've got all these fields. Now most of these fields, Nick, are pretty straightforward. A couple of them I want to bring your attention to though. One is this QuickBooks account code. Really important here that this matches up exactly with QuickBooks account code. That's the customer account code in QuickBooks. Those have to match up exactly. Now, if the sender ends up using Web Connect, which is really important, I think it's a good thing for them to do that, they don't have to worry about this because this account will automatically be created in QuickBooks with the exact QuickBooks account code in place. So if they're using Web Connect, this is an automatic process. If they're not using Web Connect, they're going to have to make sure that they copy this code and paste it into the account that they create in QuickBooks. If it's not exact, it won't work when we do our exporting over.
Good to know.
Okay. All right. So something else that we're going to look at here is this alternate session email address. When we populate emails in here, we have the original email for the client account, but alternate session email addresses. What this is going to do is it's going to send session logs to anybody that has their email in here. Now, who would that be? Or whom would that be, I think is appropriate. So that would be like a grandparent, an uncle, somebody who maybe is involved with every child under this parent account. So if there's 2 or 3 siblings and there's a grandparent who's paying for services, now this person, if you have an additional email in here, can receive the session logs as well. Now the session logs we're going to talk more about later, but the session logs are really powerful because they're branded, first of all, with the company's information. You can put in marketing information there, but most importantly, it's got all this great, rich information about what happened in the session. So it really is communicating the values and the superior service that this company is offering in a really branded email. It's training people that emails from this company are important and open them. That way, when you actually market to them, have a marketing message, they actually open that email and it doesn't go to their spam folder. The more people the more stakeholders, the people who are interested in these children's success, the better. Okay, so that's what alternate session email addresses are. Session discount percentage. This is if you're going to give a discount. They're friends of the family. We're going to give them a 30% discount. Okay, so you can give discounts to the parents across the board this way. Now, over here on the left-hand side, we've got a bunch of check boxes. Let's talk about these. This is that prospect checkbox. So you can turn it off when they're no longer a prospect. We can use that prospect checkbox to kind of filter who our prospects are and who our active clients are. Send session reports. You can just turn this off if they just aren't interested in receiving them. By and large, it's a 99.9% of clients, parents want to get those session logs. But if they don't, you can turn that off. Receive daily agenda email. Now, this is a function that's really better for, I think, administrators and for tutors, because what it does is it sends out an email the day before of all the sessions that are scheduled on the calendar. So for an instructor, that's really great. I got 3 sessions tomorrow, and here they are. Or for administrators, I've got several meetings, related to my business. That's wonderful. Yeah, question, Nick.
Okay, so you say it's the day before, but does that mean that they have to be scheduled by a certain time for it to make it into the
Yeah, it's a
daily
good
email?
question. I think it sends it out at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard. So if it's scheduled after 5 p.m., it's not going to be in that agenda. So your good point. The people need to know that this is the agenda snapshot of what your schedule looks like at this given time. But if they should be paying attention to their notifications of changes in their schedule that could be sent out, or go ahead and take a look at that calendar to make sure, confirm that things haven't changed. Good point.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that's what is receive daily agenda. Now for a parent, I suggest you turn that off. Well, actually it could be okay because it actually sends out a notification the day before if their child has a session. But we also have another way to notify them of their calendar, and we're going to take a look at that later. So honestly, you might want to just turn that one off. Okay, receive agenda if no events. This is related to this. If by chance you had that turned on for a client, you probably would not have this one turned on, because then they'd be getting an email with, hey, you don't have anything going on tomorrow on a daily basis.
Well, I guess it's nice to know, but
Well,
I don't need an email about
exactly. Well, I mean, ultimately, this is like for your instructors. So an instructor that has regular students on a daily basis, they might think that no email means that the system didn't send it out or they missed it. This is a way to kind of say, hey, you didn't miss it. You just don't have any students scheduled tomorrow. So that's kind of what that function is. So you can play around with these different settings. Ultimately, there's a lot of information here, and they're good features. They really were born out of application and the reality and the needs of a modern education center. Receive event change notifications. So this is a switch you can turn on and off. If you add a calendar event with a child under this parent's account, it will send them a notification that a new event has been created, or if it's been rescheduled, it will send a notification out. If they're just receiving too many of these notifications, you can turn that off. Once again, there still is a way for them to receive a reminder of their sessions, and we're going to show later in another video how you manage that setting. But right now, this is just about change notifications. You can turn that off for that client. Send payment receipts. This is so that the parent can receive a receipt if you're using our payment system. If you want to see, if the parent wants to receive receipts, most of them do. They want to know when they've been charged. So having that checked is good. Do not auto invoice. We're not going to worry about that right now. We're going to cover do not auto invoice when we're talking about more about the invoicing process for the LearnSpeed payment system. Last thing we're going to take a look at under the parent account here is, you notice that we have 2 sections here for addresses. The gray side is user managed, or parent managed in this case. The white side is the center managed section. So that's important because some centers, what they choose to do is once you added a new parent, you can invite them to create an account within LearnSpeed. Then the parent can log into the system and use my account in the upper right hand corner here to then edit their home address, their billing address, and to put in payment information. So all of that information, right, the easy way for the client, the parent, to change that information. But what we don't want to do, let's go back to that account we were looking at. Oh, it's not a student that we're looking at. Here, I'll get to that parent by going through the student. Check this out. Student, and now I'm going to click on the parent. And now I'm going to click on edit. So back here where we were before, if a parent has information and they update it, we don't necessarily want that to override our information. Now we can click, once they've added it, we can click on this user managed, actually copy home address to center address. So we can copy it over and overwrite it. But we don't want a parent to just be able to go in and delete all the information and we lose them, that information. So that's why we have two areas. Does that make sense, Nick?
It does.
Okay, good. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and save this. I think the rest of this was pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and save that. Now let's go ahead and get into this student account and let's edit it. This drop down over here under any account, whether it's a parent, student account, or instructor admin account, to the right over here, this little down arrow gives you choices, and we're gonna edit their account here. So the student account, first we'll take a look at this alternate session email address. Now, we had that in the parent account. Why is it here too? It's here because this would be somebody who is interested in receiving session logs that wasn't the parent or wasn't somebody who wanted to receive all the session logs for every parent, every child under this account. This would be like a resource specialist at school that was just concerned with this child's session logs. So it might be some specific counselor or maybe a teacher. So you can add their email again. Again, once again, if we can just come up with excuses, as long as they're genuinely stakeholders and they care about the kid, adding their email is really good because we're just marketing how wonderful our services are. And also it helps the student success. Yeah, good question.
Yeah. What if you have more than one email address?
Good. So we just do comma delimited. So first email at gmail.com, comma, then you do another email.
Ah, okay.
All right, so just comma separated, and that's true. You can actually do the same thing with that with up here in the main email for the parent account. If there's like two parents,
it applies in more than okay.
Yeah. So all right, notify SMS. This is a feature that will be adding SMS support for schedule reminders, but that's not what this is at this point. We're going to talk more about SMS with the notify SMS when we talk about instructors, because that's more of what it relates to. It's really about tutor matching for companies that do in-home work. So we're not going to really worry about that right now. Just the notices that this is not about calendar notifications at this point. That's a feature that's coming in the future to LearnSpeed. Now, enabled, this just turns on and off their access just like the parents. This allows the parent or the student to actually log in and see their information. So if it's enabled, they can log in. If it's not enabled, their login won't work. Send session report. Now, we think the best processes or best practice is that the instructors write their session logs for the student. Now, the parent is going to receive those session logs as well. We're going to talk more about this later, but we think it's a great idea that the student receives a session log. The student hears what they're doing well, what we want to reinforce, and we're setting the goals for the student. And the parent observes all this engagement with the instructor. So my suggestion is get an email for the student and use the send session report and have it checked. All right, we already talked about receive daily agenda emails, and you can choose whether you want the student to receive that night before an email about what they're scheduled for the next day. It's kind of the equivalent for the calendar reminder system, but it's just the fixed time that goes out the next that previous night. All right, nothing else that's new really here that we need to cover. Save that. Oh, you know what? One more thing I do need to talk about. Let's go back in. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is this, school manage. Once again, just a reminder, anytime it says manage, if you didn't have a school already predefined, you can just hit manage right here as an administrator, add the new school, and once you've done that, now you can select it. So manage on the fly prevents you from having to go to the admin tab and make the adjustments. But what I wanted to bring up is graduation year. Graduation year allows us to put in a graduation year, and it'll tell us what grade that student is in. And that's important that we don't just say that they're a freshman. We put the graduation year because this will actually track that this person's a sophomore next year, junior, senior, as they move on. All right, so we plug in that graduation year important. All right, saving that. All right, so that is how we update the information for the parent and the student after we've done the quick add. Of course, we want to do this before we formally begin our work with the student and the parent. The next video, we're going to talk more about the instructors, how we add instructors and administrators to the system. And then we're going to circle back around and we're going to talk more about the students. We're going to talk about the specifically, we're going to talk about all these sub-tabs under a student's account, work orders, session types, the rest of that. But again, next video we suggest that you go check out is how do we add and manage our instructors and administrators.